Trinnov Audio. Yang Trinnov Audio merupakan market leader dalam sound processing sekarang, terutama di bidang immersive audio. Dan Mr. Arnaud Destinay ini background-nya dari sound engineering. Ya, dan dia cukup lama membantu mengembangkan Trinnov Audio ini sampai di level sekarang yang cukup dibilang kita satu-satunya prosesor yang bisa memproses sampai 48 channel. Ya, untuk home user. Ya. Dan,
monggo Mas Hendra mungkin bisa menanyakan basic dulu tentang immersive biar kita lebih mudeng gitu, Pak.
Oke, Arnaud.
Oke.
Yes, can you help to explain in more specific but easy to understand for people in Indonesia what is the immersive sound and how is it help us in the entertainment?
Sure, I will do my best. Well, first, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to see some familiar faces. I've had a chance to meet in person when we were able to travel a few years ago. I hope it's not been too difficult times in Indonesia last year and that the situation is hopefully getting under control. So what is immersive sound? That's a very broad question, but very, very relevant indeed. As a matter of fact, immersive sound has been at the very heart of what Trinnov Audio is. I joined the company 10 years ago, but met 20 years ago. And that's the very topic they started working on, because Trinnov stands for 3D innovation. And at the time, if you remember, back in 2000, the biggest improvements in terms of audio quality and reproduction that came out was really the digital audio, high sampling rate, etc. So at the time, the co-founders started thinking, where can we get the biggest improvement in all of these different fields of research with the technology we had at hand back in 2000. And whilst the digital audio was already well established, that high sampling rate had already been introduced for audiophiles, there was one field that was not yet completely explored and that had not delivered all the quality improvement for audiophile enthusiasts, moviegoers, etc. So they realized that maybe specialization and the ability to reproduce sound in 3D is maybe where there is the biggest potential for improvement. So that's where they decided to focus. And why? Simply because in the real life, sound is physically three-dimensional. Even if you have a single source of sound in front of you, someone talking, you will hear it in 3 dimensions, because even though the direct source is in front of you, there is multiple reflection in the room that will create a sound bubble around you and effectively will let your brain understand in what type of room and in what type of acoustic environment you are in. And the fact that sound is in nature in 3 dimensions led us to think logically that the next step in the evolution of audio was to be able to deliver a more realistic, lifelike sound reproduction using more speakers around you to reproduce that lifelike sound experience. So I think essentially that's really what immersive sound is, but in more simple terms and in more obvious terms, the way we look at it these days and the way it's being sold, there is the idea of it creates a better bubble around you, but in practical terms, it's the introduction of speakers over your head, the ability to recreate sound over you rather than simply around you. And that's basically the main difference with surround sound that we used to know in cinema sound up until then. And then there is a more technical difference, which is obviously the introduction of object-based audio. And Object-based audio is basically the ability to create soundtrack in a different way and to scale the reproduction of this soundtrack across different speaker layouts. In the past, surround sound was, as we say, channel-based. So the soundtrack was produced as a 5.1 or 7.1 system, and it was meant to be reproduced on that same speaker layout. The difference that immersive sound brings and object-based formats such as Dolby Atmos and DTSX, which are the most widely spread and developed today, is the ability to use audio objects, which enable that scalability I've just been explaining. So instead of considering the sound reproduction system as a fixed number of speakers, whether it's 5.1 or 7.1 like in the past, the sound mixer and content makers consider a 3D environment where you move objects around metadata, special coordinates of each object they're going to take and move around the audience with a timestamp. And when it is encoded and then decoded by all the equipment in your home theater or any sort of entertainment system, that metadata that tells the device where the object is supposed to be will be rendered, decoded. And depending on the amount of speakers you have in the room, that device will be able to use the speakers around you to reproduce that object in the position where it's supposed to be reproduced. Andra, maybe that's a lot of explanation already. Maybe I can go on once you translate a little bit of that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Trinnov sudah merupakan perusahaan yang bergerak dalam 3D inovasi tentang audio yang sejak tahun 2000 waktu itu teknologi sudah menyentuh digital audio dengan high res, tetapi untuk movie belum ada perkembangan. Jadi mereka fokus untuk bagaimana improve 3D sound di bagi movie, dan dengan adanya karena pada kenyataan ini kita mendengarkan suara ini real life-nya sudah 3D. Biarpun orang itu berbicara di depan kita, tetapi ada pantulan suara dan noise di sekitar kita itu yang membuat dimensi, dan ini yang ingin diaplikasikan ke dalam suatu rekaman. Jadi seakan-akan ada bubble, ada gelembung di sekitar kita dengan adanya speaker di atas, overhead sound, suara yang di atas kita. Kalau dulu suaranya cuma satu layer di sekitar kita, tetapi sekarang ada suara yang keluar dari atas. Jadi seakan-akan menjadi suatu bubble. Dan juga mereka bergerak dengan object based system. Kalau pada kemarin channel based system, suatu recording itu soundtracknya mereka harus tergantung dari limit format yang ada. Seumpama mereka ngerekam dengan format 5.1, ya berarti cuma bisa 5.1. Pada saat di play di 7.1 tetap bunyinya mungkin 5.1 atau tidak banyak berubah. Tapi dengan object base itu mereka membuat suatu metadata yang berdasarkan dari koordinat suara tersebut. Jadi dengan koordinat itu kemudian dikirim ke prosesor audio, dan prosesor audio itu yang akan memproses dengan berdasarkan speaker yang terpasang di sistem. Jadi sehingga data itu tidak lagi tergantung awalnya dari jumlah speaker yang ada, tetapi bisa diaplikasikan sesuai dengan speaker yang terpasang. Makanya dengan banyak speaker, maka detailnya akan kita lebih dapat, smooth-nya dalam perpindahan. Tetapi biarpun dengan speaker yang sedikit pun, dia juga bisa merasakan perbedaannya. Yes, I think that's what you can continue, Arnaud.